Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Café Scientifique. My name is Flavio Santos, and I'm here to discuss today with you payment solutions and fintech. What's next? Let's give a round of applause to Café Scientifique and our guest, Mr. Danish Kanojia. Thank you for coming here today with us. It's a very big pleasure to have you here. Let's just give a little introduction about who you are and how do you came to sit down here and talk a little bit about your company with us today.
Thank you, Flavio. Thanks, everyone. Hi, everyone. Students who are present here and the audience who are watching us through the live streaming. I'm Danish. I'm a payments platform product lead with Wolt, a very popular food delivery application that you guys must be using. And we are very proud of generating so much value for our consumers in more than 31 countries and also creating so many different opportunities for earning money flexibly for people who are students like yourself, who are freelancers and who just want to travel around and earn money flexibly. So Wolt is an organization that creates an ecosystem of consumers, restaurants and merchants and courier partners. And all these three key players makes this whole ecosystem worthy enough to generate so much value in 31 countries where we as global payment processing team at Wolt, we process hundreds of millions of euros of transactions every month and make sure that our consumers receive faster, safer and better food deliveries right at their doorsteps. So that's me. We do payments at Wolt and this is the topic, payment solutions and what next in fintech. On a professional side, I have given more than a decade-long professional experience and time to this field and learned quite a lot. And I'm really super excited and happy to share what I've learned. But more than that, I'm also here to learn from you guys because today we are trying and shaping this world payment industry in many different ways. But I believe that tomorrow it's going to be you guys directly or indirectly working closely with payments or working with a topic or a business that would need payments. So it's a very critical topic where you can also learn something new and I can also get your take on what you're looking for next. So that's me, that's the topic and that's what I do.
And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask to our online audience as well. I'm here with you guys. Just write it down on our chat and I'll be happy to check it up with our guest.
Appreciate that.
Please.
Sure. So let's dive into the topic, right? So we are going to start with a brief history of money, right? How money has evolved over time. But also learning about what's next, we will be learning about what's next from a very different perspective, right? It's not just going to be very straightforward technologies and topics. We'll talk about what are different areas where you see payment is going to evolve. What are those cutting edge technologies that payment is going to leverage and evolve? What are those segments where there is a need for payment to evolve further? And what are those products that can be built using payments data? So, right, so there's so many different dimensions and areas that we'll be touch basing. But let's start with a very brief introduction of the history of money. I'm sure it's very obvious that you all know, but the idea here is to give you a sense of direction that how we will be leading towards the topic, right? If you see, we all started with the barter era. Like imagine there are no payments in the world, right? So imagine how you're going to buy your coffee this morning. You're going to barter it, exchange that coffee with some goods or skills that you have, right? That's what barter system was. Later that money or that value was replaced by coins and notes, and that's how currency was evolved, right? That's how currency was formed and created. And now, or I would say very recently, that currency is replaced with bits and bytes of data, right? So now you don't really, or a lot of, a big portion of transaction is not just about coins and money, it's about just bits and bytes of transaction. You just show that you have made the transaction and a merchant receive a notification and that's it, that the payment is done. So there's no real cash involved there, right? Where you are actually giving the money to someone else. But what's going to be next is the digital revolution. That's what fintech is going to shape. That's what financial technologies is going to do. So that's like a brief history. But the idea behind this is, if you see how humans have constantly tried to enhance, constantly tried to improve the way they transact value, the way they exchange the value from one party to other in exchange of goods, in exchange of the things they want to acquire. And that gives us a sense of direction that evolution in payments, evolution in the way we pay is always going to happen. We always want to improve the way we want to pay. There's not going to be a set destination where payments or fintech is going to stop. So that was the idea behind this whole history and this timeline. But now let's talk about what's really next, right? The evolving landscape, right? Now these are just 4 key pillars or 4 key areas where I see the evolution is inevitable. It has to happen, and it will be constantly growing, right? The first one is the digital acceleration, and here I'm purely talking about e-commerce. Electronic commerce, it's not going to be now like just a cool way of shopping. It's now a need. It's what happening now is the way we shop, the way we buy, there's always an online thought to it, right? That can I get this online? How much would it cost online? How can I acquire this online, right? And that's what the digital acceleration of e-commerce is. E-commerce is going to dominate. E-commerce is going to be your primary way of shopping. If not now, it's already started happening in a lot of different economies in the world, especially in the Asia Pacific, Nordics, and it's slowly and gradually going to come to Central Asia, Africa, and rest of the world. I mean, US is again a giant where e-commerce and digital transactions are in trillions and trillions of dollars every year. So we are talking about the digital acceleration in the world of commerce, and payments and fintech sits right in the core of it, right? Every business that happens in this world, it happens only for one reason: for payment to really go through, for the consumer to actually transact with that business. And that's the whole and sole purpose of a business, apart from generating a real value for a consumer, right? The next one is rise of challenges, right? It's not just commerce, right? It's also, if you see historically how banks have been formed, right? Banking infrastructure is primarily been created to safeguard your money, to facilitate trade. If you talk about 17th century industrial revolution, the Renaissance, or the 18th and 19th century, the digital, the flood that came with Y2K and the overall e-commerce that started. The banking infrastructure was created to support the trade and to safeguard users' money so that the user don't need to carry cash all the time. But now, if you see, based on this foundation, the banking infrastructure has become now less agile. It's become slow with all the physical branches, and this has given birth to the challengers to come in, right? All these digital banks like Revolut, N26, they are coming in to challenge this whole phenomena of banking. That the foundation itself of banking is stopping banks to grow faster, and that's where these digital banks are challenging the status quo and now coming up with more and more highly advanced technical and financial products that are giving consumers convenience and an amazing user experience to transact, right? Their onboarding is faster, the transaction is faster, the overall value that consumers can get from these digital banks is much more higher as compared to like a very traditional bank. Of course, the trust factor is high on traditional banks, but that's slowly going to change. And the last two is, the globalization. Of course, we cannot ignore the need of cross-border remittance, right? If I want to buy like a phone here, it would be just a local transaction between me and the shopkeeper. But we need to think of how these businesses are sourcing products globally. And there's always a need of global transaction and global payments that needs to happen. So when we talk about payments and fintech, we need to think globally. We need to think of multi-currency setup where people from different economies and different countries need to transact. And lastly is the embedded finance. It's a very hot topic these days. You can think of embedded finance as if you want to buy something for which you need a credit line from a bank. Imagine an iPhone 16 Pro, right? You really don't need to go to a bank separately for that. The finance or the credit line application is embedded into the e-commerce journey. You can just simply check out using a BNPL. That's an embedded finance. So there's so much advancement happening in all these 4 areas. So these are the 4 areas where I feel the payments and fintech ecosystem is evolving at a very rapid pace, right?
Just looking to it, it's interesting that we have a perspective, or we start with a past perspective to look to the future, right? What's next? And when I was looking to the slides, I was like, maybe Germany is still not there yet. Because I also feel that we're still using very old traditional ways of payments.
Yes.
So my first question, the first question that came to my mind was, what are the new trends that you see for German market? And what are the new trends you see in the global market, as you see in the second slide? So I think there is a gap between these two.
Yes, yes.
What do you see?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, and I don't want to blame the system here, but I believe uh, it's the regulation around payments, right? It's a very sensitive and very critical topic. When we talk about payments, it's primarily about moving money from one point to the other, and that involves so many different parties when done in a very different setups, right? If you as a consumer making a payment to a business, that's a very different payment processing as compared to when 2 businesses are paying to each other, right? And especially when you put in a geopolitical factor to it, right? If you given when you see that these 2 parties are based in 2 different countries, then there are 2 different regulations, right? Especially the audience here, if you want to learn more about payments, do read about PSD2 and now PSD3 that is coming in. These are payment service directives that talk about the regulation around payments, right? And it varies from Germany to Dubai to Japan to Philippines. And the regulators here are very much like, they have varied opinions. When we talk about Germany, it's a part of European Union. We have euro as a currency, so we belong to the eurozone. There are very different set of regulation that does not allow money to move so fast and so flexibly. That's why it is very difficult for fintechs to step in and do something very disruptive like UPI in India, or like Tabby in Dubai, because the regulation here, it needs them to be very, very highly compliant to the solution. So they need to have hundreds of millions worth of euros as a safeguarding deposit to safeguard consumers' money, and at the same time they need to have backing of very large financial institutions like banks and all. So that's why it is a bit difficult, but it's going to change for sure. Yeah.
In the global scale, how do you see the next? What is next there?
I think what I personally feel what's going to happen next, and that's something that is the real value of payments product that can really give back to humanity, is bringing in interoperability and standardization, right? So you can imagine a consumer from a very struggling economy of a country, their needs are surrounded by very bare minimum necessities of food, shelter, clothes, whereas a consumer in a very developed economy, the businesses around them are fighting for their attention. And in developed economies, attention is the biggest currency, right? So if there is an interoperable way for these consumers or these banking institutions in these 2 economies to transact easily, we can really create a bridge to transact value from abundance to scarcity, right? We can really create a way through which economies which are really flourishing and generating so much value can really transfer that value directly to a person who needs it, right? And this person can really offer a skill, product, or a good to the other person on the other side, right? And that interoperability and standardization is currently lacking. It's really not easy for someone to straight away transact from London to Nigeria in a jiffy, and from someone in Nigeria to just ship the product, because there are so many different regulation and compliance and hidden fees and charges. So that's one. And second, I feel it's inevitable not to talk about AI, right? Especially if you are in an institute that is like spearheading the AI innovation in Berlin, BSBI. I think AI is something that we should be really looking forward to. So AI in payments is already happening, and it's primarily in fraud detection. But what's going to happen next is hyper personalization, right? Like AI learning about your payment habits, AI learning where you spend, how you spend, and what do you spend on. and then taking those payment decisions on behalf of you, and reducing all that friction of OTPs, biometric and everything, by just making sure that looking at your habit of payment, predicting what you're going to buy next and making that payment decision for you. So that's something I'm really looking forward to.
Very good.
Yeah. Let's move on and let's talk about the evolution that would happen based on the pain points of consumers, right? So to do that, and this is going to be a bit educational, but let's really deep dive into what really happens when you tap a card on a point of sale, right? Be it your Apple Pay, Google Pay, or your card, or even your digital wallet like PayPal, right? What really happens there? Well, there are many different types of payments, right? If it's a consumer payment or a business payment, it's typically, there are 3 different steps involved. It's authorization, clearance, and settlement. Authorization is just making sure that you are the right person who's using the payment instrument, you have the right balance, and you are eligible to pay for that product, to pay for that entity, or to pay to that merchant. That's typically authorization. Innovations like you being thrown 3DS challenge for an OTP or a push notification on your other app to just confirm is typically what happens in authorization. Clearance is basically that confirmation that goes to the merchant that now the money would arrive, if not right now, maybe after 3 days, but you can dispatch the product. You can let the consumer know that you have the money confirmation and the money will be dispatched. So like in a typical Wolt scenario, you can imagine when you pay using a card, you give your fingerprint scan to your, or do a double click on Apple Pay and do a facial recognition, and the merchant receive a notification that your card is good to be processed. This is where the restaurant would start preparing your order, your pizza, and would dispatch it. The merchant would actually receive the money after 3 days, and that's what settlement is. So this is just like we are decoding the transaction, but there are a lot of pain points here, and there's going to be a lot of evolution that would happen in these areas, right? So I particularly would like to point out like slow cross-border transfers, right? So if I really want to order the kanafas from Jordan, right, which I really love, it would be very difficult for me to make a payment without involving so many different cross-border parties and so many hidden charges, right? And then of course, then there's the whole logistics that the merchant needs to trigger. But the payment itself has so many different lags and parties involved if it's a cross-border payment. So that's like one area. There's so many hidden international fees. I'm sure a lot of us comes from different parts of the world. We must have tried sending money back home or tried receiving money from our home countries, and we know that we get like a small share of that pie goes to so many different providers in this whole food chain. Security vulnerabilities, of course, it's very, very risky to pay without knowing who the merchant is. How do you want to authenticate the transaction, and how much do you really want to give the merchant your information? So security is also very critical, and the overall checkout experience and limited payment options. So this is like very typically what Wolt has championed, right? Your checkout would be smooth, you just slide to pay and the payment would go through. You would have all the payment options that you would like to pay through. And these are some of the pain points where I see there can be a lot of innovation that can happen.
And this is from the point of view of the companies, right? Because when we were talking before this slide, you were telling me that you gather all this information with AI nowadays, of course, from the consumer perspective. And then I put myself as consumer, right? And I'm from marketing. So it's like, you guys are getting my data and try to making marketing campaigns out of it, maybe, if you start connecting these 2 dots. Or what is the pain point for consumers? Now looking to the consumer point of view. First, I will be very much concerned about security, of course. They are using my data. Who is using my data? Who has my data? Who storage my data? How they are using, to who they are giving? What are the other pain points you can see?
I think you've very rightly pointed out about the payments data and how merchants use it. If you think recently there was a big fiasco between Google and Apple and the regulators and in the US talking about how much of the location data these platforms really use, right?
Fiasco was a very nice name. It was a huge fight. It was a scandal. It was everywhere in the news.
That's right. But and I'm sure that they've really scrutinized and tightened all these platforms to use your location data very carefully. But this is what I feel, that after location, what's the next important data these companies would really like to know? Because ultimately what these companies want from a consumer is their money. And payments data, I believe, is the next most important data. I believe the most important data for them to know that where these users are spending, how much are they spending, right? And that's something very rightly you pointed out. And I believe in Europe particularly, where GDPR and PSD2 compliance are very, very strong, consumers are really very skeptical, careful and concerned about where and how their data is being used. And that's why building very strong consent mechanism, building a trust ultimately, like we can throw in a lot of jargons like all these compliance regulations that comes in, but ultimately it all boils down to the trust that you are building as a merchant with the consumer, right? Even though there are very strong compliances in the Europe, but as a merchant like Wolt, you can build very, very strong trust with the consumer by giving them an amazing payment experience, right? By giving them a great support experience. So payments in general, I think it's not just about taking your card, processing it and making sure that your food get delivered. It's also what happens before it. So how you add your card, how we communicate that we are very careful with your card information, what kind of certifications do we have, and what happens after it, like what is the kind of support we give. If your payment failed, but your bank has been debited, we can really care about the consumer and put ourselves in the consumer's shoe and can like really create that connection with the consumer that your payment information is still safe with us, the money would be refunded. So the businesses also need to think of building great experiences around payments as well. So if payments is core, there is consumer experience around it, and then there is the core business value of what goods and products you sell. That's how I feel that this three-layer architecture of an e-commerce business. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Good. That's a good one.
Cool. So let's move on to. We just learned about, like, from a consumer pain points, where do we see innovation would happen. I remember me and Flavio discussing about, we were going to talk about payments, but in Germany there's so much of card, like I really don't speak very good German, but Zahlung mit Karte bitte is like something that I've really championed.
Yeah, look at you, very good, sehr schön.
But nur bar is also a response that I've learned in Germany, right? Because cash is the king here. But is cash really going to, or I would say the cashless ecosystem is really a near future? But I would rather answer this by just putting an argument that what is better if we are in a cash society and what's not. So efficiency, of course, like if we talk about a cashless ecosystem, it's very efficient. You just take out your card, carrying your phone. You don't need to worry about withdrawing cash and maintaining, that the coins and bills, especially the coins, in your pocket. So it's very efficient. At the same time, it's very secure. Like nobody would really mug you on the streets. You just carrying your card. If it's stolen, give a call. Or if you're using a very advanced bank, just block the card. So it's really safe and secure. But at the same time, the point that you mentioned, right? It's against privacy. Wherever you spend, there are so many different parties involved, starting from the bank to the payment processor to MasterCard, Visa, to the merchant themselves. They know how much you're spending and where you're spending. So from a privacy, it's an against. But at the same time, it's also the financial inclusion is also very, very important. Like there's a saying that in a cashless society, we are looking at world peace, right? There won't be wars, there won't be terrorism, because all these illegitimate activities and terrorism are being funded by money that cannot be traced. And when we talk about a cashless system where digital payments are being there and no cash, the money is purely traceable. So you can really see what is being funded, who is transferring what money to whom. So that's also a very, very important aspect. But is cash going to completely being removed from the face of this planet? I don't really see that in the near future because there are so many different reasons to it, right? Cash is very culturally driven. In a lot of cultures and societies, cash is considered to be a very nice gift as well. Cash works with everyone, people from every walks of life. My grandma uses cash. My parents sometimes use cash when they are not really well versed with the payment applications that they are using, right? So that's also some key reasons where cash is still here to stay for at least some foreseeable future. Yeah.
Can I call you Danish?
Yes.
Of course. So Danish, also in tourism, when you're talking now, like my parents, my grandparents, we tend to believe that our generation, especially, are really easygoing with digital payments. But when I was traveling for my birthday, I went to a country, and then it was so much easier as well with cash. And then I was like, okay, let's just do all the transactions with cash. Shocking was like going to the airport, exchange money bank.
Yeah.
And then they didn't ask any document. They didn't ask any information from me. Just like, oh, I have this amount of euros, here this amount of local change. I was like this gives me ideas.
Yeah.
I was, of course, making fun out of it. But I mean, from a marketing perspective, they literally didn't get my data. They don't know where I'm going to spend this money, when I'm going to spend my money, or how much, and which store, what I'm going to buy, when I'm going to buy. From marketing is always all in the air. And then I keep asking myself, how these managers afterwards making decisions if they don't know how tourists are spending their money with?
That's right.
This is the data concern, but at the end, now first I push back to consumer perspective, now I'm pushing back to the company perspective, because I guess from Wolt, you guys from payment solutions are inside of your own company. But imagine if I am a small startup, I ask another company to take care of my payments. I also don't have this data. I also give this data to someone else. So how do you see managers in marketing especially making decisions together with payment solutions?
That's a very interesting question. And that's where, there is a lot of innovation happening on payments data, how we can really leverage the payments data and can create innovative products out of it. But at the same time, there are regulators who are after merchants like us and these startups who really want them to be very careful with the payments data, because consumers don't want their payment data to be used, right? But coming to your question, right, that how a marketing manager in a company who is a small startup company who's offloaded or outsourced their payment processing can really leverage, right? This is something that I've learned while working with really sophisticated payment processor, right? So within Wolt, we process payments within ourselves. We are also very closely working with some huge and large payment processors. And these payment processors give you the ability to learn about the user profile without disclosing their personal information, right? And this is where masking and tokenization really helps, right? Tokenization is a very powerful concept which replaces a consumer, Flavio, with just a token, right? So all as a business I'll know about you as a consumer is not your personal details, but you only as like a token, right?
A number.
Exactly.
Oh no.
Because ultimately business take decisions based on volume and scale, right? And that's where they really don't want to learn about an individual, but rather a cohort, rather a persona, or rather a group of people, right? And that's where when it's easily payment processors or banks or financial institution replace consumers' personal information with just tokens or numbers or identifiers, it's very easy to map that identifier with my user and see how that identifier is behaving, right? In different aspects without revealing your personal information.
Great.
And that's where there are so many payment analytics tools that are powering this whole analysis for the marketing teams, where they see that there is a big group of users who traveled from Germany to Croatia and then went to a specific restaurant, and from that restaurant, they ordered some particular products. So it would give them an idea to let's promote this product in
Yeah.
Germany, or it's an opportunity to open that restaurant, that kind of cuisine in Germany. So that's how maybe these organizations can take like some wise decisions based on payment data.
Great.
Cool. Let's move on. And now we are at the core of it, right? What are the cutting edge technologies? You must have heard of most of these terminologies, right? Like what are instant payments? Maybe we are in Germany, we don't see instant payments that much, but we have SEPA Instant recently. This is news. So we recently have this SEPA Instant being rolled out to consumers, and hopefully in the year 2026, the government is also planning for not to put in any ATM withdrawal fees, to make sure that all the banks offer you instant transfer of funds without any extra charges. So you would see not just SEPA, but SEPA Instant evolving a lot in Germany, but in general, I think globally as well. Instant payment like UPI in India has just revolutionized the whole payment industry. It's now even bigger than Visa in just 11 years. And there is still a lot to happen in the instant payment space. AI and machine learning, I think it's as I've said, like not just fraud detection, but hyper personalization is going to be the thing within payments, where AI would learn about your payment habits, and AI would be taking decisions on your behalf on how to purchase, what to purchase, where to purchase from. And biometric authentication, I think you guys have heard recently in China, they have launched facial payments, right? Where you don't need to even carry your phone or a card. You have your payment instrument right on your body, right? You just take your face, give a nice smile, and your payment is done, right? And blockchain, of course, it's a very powerful technology. It's sad to see that it's been replaced very easily or loosely with cryptocurrencies or these altcoins, but it is a very, very powerful technology infrastructure that has been created. So I think there's still a lot that is not utilized. So these are like some cutting edge technologies. That's just like some placeholders for you guys to go back, Google, ChatGPT, and learn more about it. So would really appreciate if you can just check these topics.
Or we can just ask a little bit now.
Of course, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about blockchain. All the other ones we can kind of know more or less what it is about by the name.
Yeah.
But blockchain, I feel like we discussed pretty little about blockchain.
Sure.
It's actually a revolution, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. I mean, in the payments world, it's I would say it's the next big thing. What's going to happen is it's a big shift, which would be abstracted from consumers, right? If you feel yourself as the payers and the consumers, you won't see that shift. You would only see the shift in terms of speed. But the shift blockchain is going to bring in the technology infrastructure, in the payment infrastructure of these merchants like Wolt and Zalando and whatnot, and banks, is going to be an amazing. I mean, it's going to reduce the overall payment cost drastically. It's going to bring so much speed to the payment. But let's have a look at like what typically blockchain does. We know Bitcoin, we know Ethereum, Litecoin, and Dogecoin and all that, stable coins as well. But all of these are based on a very powerful infrastructure called blockchain, which is a distributed ledger. So imagine all your transaction information lying in a central bank, and bank has the sole control on your money, whether they want to give this money on loan to someone who wants to run illegitimate business, or doing lobbying in a particular business, or the bank want to just keep that money, earn the leverage and interest on top of it, right? But with the blockchain technology, it is again tokenization, right? They would replace your actual accounting information with just numbers, but you can literally see where the money is being moving, and with that distributed ledger, and that makes it so powerful that the transparency that it brings, the decentralization that it brings, will reduce the overall infrastructure cost. There need not to be like heavy data centers just managing all your transaction at one place. It's also like single point of failure as well, but it would be distributed, and it's built on a very sophisticated algorithm that would make sure that your transaction data is safe. We right now, because human tendency is like we literally lean towards those exciting and shortcut ways of earning money like cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So I think we are now very much heavily focused on how much Bitcoin is growing in the last 3 years and all that. But blockchain's true potential will be the industrial money movement, right? The central bank digital currencies, right? There's going, you can imagine we don't need coins and notes to be printed, and that would simply be replaced by a blockchain ledger, and you can clearly see how much money is being generated by an economy. So it would basically bring the transparency across the globe, where you can literally see how much money is being generated by a country and where that money is flowing, right? So that's something that is very powerful. But yes, if you want to really leverage a blockchain, learn about blockchain in terms of how the Ethereum ledger is built, right? How the Ethereum ledger can really power stable coins, right? And there's a very nice anecdote of a pizza that was bought using Bitcoin like 8 years back, and today that pizza costs like millions of dollars, right?
Sure.
So transacting using Bitcoins and Ethereum is, I really don't believe that's going to fly, because who would want to transact with an asset that keeps on growing, right? I would want to transact with something stable, and that's where the central bank digital currencies would really come in and disrupt the whole ecosystem.
Let's see.
Yeah, let's see. Really hopeful for that. Cool. Moving on, let's learn a bit more about open banking and the security aspect. These are primarily the data aspects of your payments, right? What open banking is, I think it's a buzzword that everybody is using, but what it truly means is it gives the platform convergence, right? So today, just because you trust a bank to keep your money with them, you are bound to use their digital application, their digital infrastructure and products. But open banking is basically a framework that would allow a bank to connect your account to a layer where there are startups and companies that can build amazing experience on top of it. Experiences like accessing your balance, amazing experiences by knowing how much you are spending, your budget information, your personal finance management. So open banking technically allows technology players to get access to your funds safely and securely, and give freedom to users not just to stick to one bank just because their money is lying with one bank. You can choose your experience, you can choose your bank, and you can choose your payment product. So all these three things you have the freedom to choose from, and you would see so much innovation once this opens up. I mean, it's open banking, but it's still not that much open in a lot of economies. But once it opens up, you will see so much innovation where there would be providers who would be at your doorstep and at your disposal to offer you amazing experiences, to link your account, to see where you're spending, how much you're spending, and to pay very seamlessly. So that's that. And for merchants, like for companies, not just consumers, for we as merchants is also a great product, because an account to account payment is much cheaper than a card transaction. So we as merchant pay a small portion out of that pizza, like 20 euro pizza that you pay for payment processing. But if it's going to happen through open banking, we were going to pay a little lesser than that. So we are also vouching for that. So that's open banking for you.
Yeah, and it's all going back to data again, right? And I see German market especially very resistant to share the data.
Yeah.
And especially within banks. How do you see this happening or not happening in Germany?
Yeah. Banks are very strong enterprises and corporates, I would say, right? There is this, in the fintech world, there is something called, lobbying, where all these banks lobby and then can, influence the decisions of regulators. So it is difficult. It is because banks are huge. Banks are typically the one that are influencing the economies of countries. So it is difficult, but it is going to happen because there is a shift. There is a shift from product centering approach, where since the way bank operates, we are bound to comply with that. Okay, if I want to open a bank account with this bank A, and I know that they take like 3 to 5 days to onboard me, do a KYC and all that, I would have to follow that because I have to comply, because I trust that bank and I feel that, okay, that's how it is being done. But now the consumers are choosing these challenger banks like Revolut, N26 because it's highly flexible for us to just sign up, upload my identities, click some selfies, and boom, I have a bank account. And this is clearly an evidence that from a product-centric approach, we are moving to consumer-centric. We are really moving to areas where we want to solve consumer problems. And this is clearly going to shift all these conventional traditional banks to give in to this open banking infrastructure and really give consumers the true value where they can opt in and give like, great experience to consumers through which they can just onboard, transact, and, see their financial data.
Very good.
Cool. And lastly, I think I would want to touch base on the segments, right? Where do we see payment innovation happening in terms of the segments? There are two different aspects to it. One is on the consumer side, there is a segment of financial empowerment. We talk about a lot of payment products, fintech products in developing or developed economies, but the true potential of payment products is in the financial empowerment in the underdeveloped economies, right? I remember working for a digital bank, a project for a digital bank in a country called Mauritania in North Africa, and the key problem they were solving was making sure how they can disburse the World Bank incentives to their citizens, right? And that could not happen with all these fancy fintech products. It need to happen with a basic, investing in the basic infrastructure where access to financial technology or access to a bank account must be made very easier for citizens in such struggling economies as well, right? So financial empowerment is a great, a very powerful segment from consumers. From a merchant point of view, a big portion of or a big volume of commerce globally lies within the SME segment. SME is the small and the medium enterprise segment. It's not the large e-commerce or tech players like Amazon. If we talk about the real undistributed and very fragmented commerce that is happening in the SME sector. And the SME sector is still struggling. You can imagine a small Späti shop, maybe in Germany, or a small grocery store in a small tier 2 city in India or Africa, where they are still operating on cash, right? And they are still struggling with the overall cash overhead. They still are under the risk of getting robbed because they are having so much cash in the store, and they need to still close the shop, travel all the way to a different city to transfer this money to their bank so that they can really facilitate buying raw material products for their business, right? So the SME sector is very much distributed, fragmented, and there's a lot of innovation that needs to happen. Typically, the areas are like the local access to the local payment options for those SMEs, right? That is important. Some of the SMEs are really hesitant in getting a POS machine because they really don't want to get into the whole hassle of the operations of how to put in, how to accept payment, how to make sure that this money really reflects in their bank account. Data-driven consumer insight, I think they are far away from how much they can leverage the consumer data that they have. And of course, credit. All of these SMEs are struggling to get maybe a small loan because they don't have financial data to prove how much business do they do if they do only in cash. But if they are in a cashless system where they can show that this is how much of volume they are processing in terms of transaction, digital transaction, it's very easy for a bank or even merchants like Wolt to give a small credit to these restaurants. In the same way, financial empowerment, it's all about, banking access to the undeserved population, the budgeting tools, really making those consumers literate about how much are they spending and how much they can really save if they choose the right payment products. So these are like two segments where I feel there's a lot of payment innovation that can happen. So I believe that to sum it up, I think we discussed about what's going to happen in payments in terms of the key cutting edge technologies, the key 4 pillars where payments would really grow, from a consumer pain point where payments would grow, and from a segments, right, like from 2 different segments where payment would grow. right? So this is just a brief gist of what we just discussed.
I'll ask you a personal question. Is
Sure.
that okay?
Of course.
Are you on an online bank or are you on a physical bank? What is your bank account?
I have recently shifted to an online bank.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
I'll not
yes.
ask which one. I just want to know if we are
Yes, yes,
together with it.
Yeah, I have recently shifted to an online bank. Personally, I think I come from a country where saving has been highly promoted, and we were given interest on our savings account, right? Interest up to 4%, 6%. That is typically an interest that we get from government funds of investment or pension funds in Germany. So interest was a product that I was always missing, so that it really inculcate or promote the habit of saving in Germany. And there are some digital banks that recently came up that are giving interest on their bank accounts and all. And of course, it's very easy to move funds. Their card products are very lucrative, and the loyalty also is that what they've built on these platforms is amazing.
Yeah.
The loyalty solutions are I just love the loyalty products that these digital banks are offering.
I love the loyalty as well. I'm there with you. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, for example, until I live in Germany as well, funny enough, the contradiction is there. Because until moving to Germany, all my banks were physical. So until the last country I was living was Portugal, and then I forgot to update my phone to a German phone since I moved to Germany, and I still have my bank account there. And then I cannot do any transaction on my bank because they send an SMS to my phone number, which is the non-updated one.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's update my bank account to my new number, right?
That's right.
I need to do this physically.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, I'm not in Portugal. How should I do that? And then there's no other way, literally. So then I was like, yeah, welcome to Germany. And then I moved to Germany. I was like, online bank, that's it. I'm going it. I embraced it. It was the best decision of my life. I have a lot of benefits, but then people use cash here. So it's not digital. So it's like I'm constantly making bad decisions. And then I don't even know, because the way we see these markets for progress, right? We want this to happen, definitely. But at the end of there's a lot of, as you said, pain points and a lot of fails, or let's say moments that we cannot connect with it, or is not completely well designed.
Yeah.
And then we have these experiences. And you were just saying, like, online, or the banks are focusing on consumers. The banks are looking to consumers nowadays. But yes and no, right?
That's right.
How do you see this?
Well, particularly if we talk about Germany, right? We see that, especially like people in this room and all of us, like in a specific age range, having a specific financial and tech literacy, I'm sure we must have complained a lot about like how the system is built. But one thing that I've learned and realized, that Germany is a country, and Berlin, with a lot of different consumer personas, right? And especially in product management, we learn about consumer personas. How do we define, how do we really learn what this consumer really care about? All of us, we maybe have something really common to care about is, our technology literacy. We really want to stay updated, or okay, if there is a digital bank, let's try it out, let's see, if it's really going to make things easier for me, right? We know we can really hedge our risks between, switching from a highly tech bank to a very conventional bank. So that's a different consumer persona here. But at the same time, there is so many different consumer personas in Germany that come from different backgrounds, right? Different backgrounds that are not very privileged, very highly privileged, that they really don't care about money.
Yeah.
And different businesses that they run, the businesses that focus on only a very specific set of user group. Like, you can imagine some Turkish shops that are that are selling something very specific products, or an Indian grocery store specific products only for a specific segment of consumer. So Germany, I think, is a very unique market where there are different consumer personas, and financial products or banking products are something that needs to be built to be catered to all of them, right? Now, if you think of traditional banks, they particularly care about building something that can serve to masses, right? To serve to all the different types of consumers. So they really build product for consumers based on a very common theme. And that common theme is they just need to make sure that the customer can keep the money in the account, withdraw the money from the bank account, and can transact with a Giro card.
Yep.
But if you look at these digital banks like Revolut, Trade Republic, and N26, their target audience is something, it's very different, right? They really don't want to tap into the market of a Speti owner or of any unorganized business owner or people with very different visa statuses. They want specifically to target consumers that are technically literate, have all their documents in place and are ready to spend, not just keep the money locked in their bank account, because they really don't offer credit products as much as the traditional banks. So that's why I feel that there's segregation, because the consumer personas are very different in Germany. I would say always research the market, see which brand resonates with the values, your values, and choose that product. You have made the right decision of
Hopefully.
switching to a digital bank. Yeah.
Good.
Cool. I think that brings us to the end. I hope you guys have had something informational, but this is the time where I would like to learn from you. So please feel free to ask as many questions as you want. I'm super happy to take up questions now.
Feel free, guys. Don't feel shy. There are no wrong questions always.
Yeah.
And also online, our online audience, if you have any questions, just type in the chat. I'm here following up. Any questions are welcomed. Just raise your hand to have one in the back.
Yeah.
Just a moment. We need a microphone.
Okay, so you said that like the paper is not going to disappear, but what do you think about like changing currency as time, as water, as I don't know, so like as money is like, I don't know how it's going to change. Do you have also any opinion about it?
So if I've understood correctly, you're talking about the fluctuation in the currencies, right?
Yeah, gold was being talking about at some time, like is it going to be new money? Now it's like talked about like time. Now it's because of all these wars and global warming, it's water. So that's what I wanted to ask.
Got it.
Good, good.
That's a very interesting question. I think a bit different from payments and fintech, but in general on currency fluctuation, what's my opinion? There are certain currencies or certain economies that, like Germany, consider the Eastern economies highly volatile, right? Highly fluctuating. There are so many different factors to it, right? When a currency fluctuates, primarily it is primarily related to the geopolitical factors, right, in that country. Of course, you mentioned like some recent things about the fluctuation that is happening through war, right? In terms of payments and fintech solution, let's take a deeper look at how these currency fluctuation really affect payments and fintech solution, right? There is something that we call as interchange fee, right? So when you really transact from cross border, there is an interchange fee that is being calculated dynamically by knowing what is the current currency conversion, right? Of course, there are ways you can hedge this risk by really moving, maybe let's say Turkish lira to euro when you see the values right now. Maybe Indian rupees is struggling, so it's a good time to transact euros back in India. But at the core of it, right, these currency fluctuation really tells you the reality, what's happening on the ground. That the reason currency has been fluctuated most of the times is also because of inflations, also because of the reason that the value of that money has really gone down. If you talk about like 5 years back, if a USD versus euro was let's say 80s to 1, 80s to 100, right? At that time, 100 euro was really worth it in Germany, was really having a very high value. But now, if the currency has fluctuated and that USD to euro equation has changed, the euro value has also changed, over time. So that is always the reason. War and geopolitical region, elections are always something that is highly risky, and that's where there are ways where you can hedge and move money if you are like, living abroad. But in terms of the payments and fintech ecosystem, I think cross-border payments and multi-currency payments, right, where you can have a travel card which can have multiple currencies, or we're talking about digital banks that offers you multiple bank accounts with digital currencies, is an area where there's a lot of innovation that can happen. Because the reason you are asking this question shows that there's a lot of complication in this topic, right? That if you really want to transact, you have euros and you want to buy something that is in dinar in the Middle East, how do you really see that transparency in this currency? And that is where I feel that bringing transparency to this fees, charges in this multi-currency setup is where a lot of innovation can happen. Of course, I can't really comment on the geopolitical environment, that's what's happening, but look out for those digital multi-currency products that gives you those transparent way of looking at the fees and breakdown of the fees, and those are basically your bet when you want to transact money outside overseas, and you really want to see that how this technology is working. I hope it was able to answer your question.
Can I add something to this as well, if it's okay?
Sure.
Imagine you are in Turkey and the Turkish lira really goes down. This happens on COVID-19. So we saw this phenomenon, the inflation in Turkey was really high. And then the Turkish lira started going down because of a lot of political instability as well. So there was a specific context that I'm not going there as well. But imagine you are an individual and you will say, oh God, the Turkish liras are going down. If you are a little bit aware of what does that means to you as a person, you will just throw your money somewhere else, sorry. And then nowadays we think about gold because Chinese people are buying gold, and then the price of gold is, Chinese government, is buying gold, and then the price of gold is going up. There's a whole other situation for this because of what happened in Russia, and then it's a whole complex discussion that I'm not going. But if you are just aware that you are losing money because of this instability, what do you need to do? Change this money, right? Okay, if Turkish liras are going down, I need to not have Turkish liras, right? Gold is an option. Okay, it's very stable. Chinese people are buying.
Yeah.
I know that. My professor told me. I will buy some gold. So if in the next day you buy some gold, and then the Turkish lira drop down 400%, the next day you buy Turkish lira back, and then you do your groceries.
Yeah.
Because you just keep the value of that money without spending it, right? If you keep it on your bank, you are literally losing money. So you need to transact. Why I'm telling you this story specifically to Turkey, right? Because these payment solutions, digital solutions, are making it extremely easy for us nowadays to avoid these situations, even in high, let's say, embargo countries. You know, if you talk embargo, some countries should come to your mind, such as Russia nowadays, super full of embargoes for obvious reasons, Iran and Cuba. So for you to transact, to make these transactions, has never been so easy, so you don't lose your money. And that's, I guess, the best we can get out of these situations, so we avoid necessarily as individuals, as consumers, or to protect our power of buying, because payment solutions are here actually to help us in this specific context. They are really helpful in this moment. Okay, money is going out, I need to put this value on something else so I don't lose it. Because if I keep all my money on my bank account in the old days, or even in Germany, shocking or not, there are some people that still take their money, put it under the bed, believe it or not, you are losing money. You are losing money. And I guess these are very good solutions.
That's a great advice.
For us to keep aware, what does that mean to us? What is these guys are talking is not so distant for us as we actually think, okay?
There are so many trade finance products as well where you can just buy gold digitally. You really don't need to carry physical gold. You can just buy an ETF, which is like
ETFs.
but this is not an investment advice.
Yeah, it's
right?
not an investment, guys. It is a mechanism for us to avoid
Yeah.
losing the value of our money.
That's right.
Which is something else. It's not an investment. Even friends from Russia, they are buying bitcoins, so they transfer to bitcoins and they transfer back because they know it's not so volatile. So there are some thousands of ways of doing that, and it was got. If you think about old days, what did I need to do? I need to get my cash, right, remove from the bank, go to an exchange, change this to dollars in this case because they are dominating the market, and then I change back. It's a whole nother process. They get my IDs, it's papers. Is getting easier than ever.
That's true. That's true.
Any other question? Please. Just a moment. Microphone is coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this productive and informative session. Thank you very much, all of you. I would like to know your idea about the taxation system and this digital banking. Do you think that taxation system is in favor of digital banking or cash payment? And how far the personal data will be shared through the digital banking with the taxation organizations?
Great. That's a great question. Like, that's something that
we pay a lot of taxes in Germany, right? Here we are.
That's a question that really impacts the individuals, and I think let's look at the whole taxation system and the digital banks, right? What the taxation system wants to really know is a legitimate way, a hard proof of the source of your income and the destination of the expenditure, right, where you are spending. And as I said, like cash is very difficult to trace. It's literally impossible. Today, a 200 euro bill is in my pocket, tomorrow is it in a donor shop, and day after that it's maybe somewhere sitting in a Swiss bank. So the traceability of cash is completely gone. Taxation systems really favor banking infrastructures or digital transactions because they are traceable, and it makes it very easier for even individuals to file taxes with just those reports and those transactions, right? The moment money is out of the whole digital loop and converted to cash, that's where the taxation systems will start asking you more and more questions on what have you really done with that money. Or if they see goods and products that you have acquired and possessed and that has been recorded in the system, right, like an apartment or an asset that you have purchased, but they don't see a relevant digital transaction for that, that's where they'll start asking more and more questions. And like I've heard many stories of Finanzamt reaching out to you after a decade and asking you to bring those receipts and invoices that you really made those purchases 10 years back as a student. So I think it's in total favor of these digital banks, and products like TaxFix. It's a digital product. It's again a fintech product that allows you to just upload the receipts and reports from your employer and give them all the information to build a whole tax return response for Finanzamt. It's an amazing product, right? And all it needs is legitimate bank account transaction records, or trade finances if you have bought stocks, or if you have bought assets using your money using digital finance, and that's make it very easier for them and for us to justify, so long as you're not doing something shady with cash. but yeah, I think these two systems work really well together.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Hello. You talked about like in the fintech there are so many entities involved in a transaction. So wouldn't you think that like it is a sort of a disadvantage, because if I go to a merchant, I'm giving the money and getting the value, but in the fintech payment or in the fintech transaction there are multiple entities involved. So isn't that a problem, or isn't I would say a disadvantage to a fintech company or for the consumer, because that makes that more trustable, right? And one question more, it's like you talked about your grandparents, like they transact with the money. So financial or digital literacy is a problem, do you think, that have to be tackled to make it more successful fintech payment solution?
Cool. That two great questions, I think. Here's my take on it, right? So the first question is, in a normal payment life cycle, there are so many different parties involved, and everybody has their own cut to it, right? Is there a disadvantage? From a consumer standpoint, if I see, I don't see a big disadvantage, so long as we are making this payment seamless, faster and transparent to this user, right? And we are not passing these charges to the consumer. So we at Wolt, if you order a product that is there on the menu for 13 euros, of course there's deliveries and service charges, but there is no payment cost to it, right? Because merchants globally, if you shop at Amazon, Zalando, anywhere, merchants usually absorb that payment within the product price itself, right? So it's not a financial disadvantage to consumer. Just merchant need to make sure that they are using strong payment rails and technology in a way that even though there are so many different parties involved, they would make it possible for you to transact seamlessly as a consumer. For businesses, for merchants, definitely it's a problem, right? The more parties involved, the more it would take money, time for the money to settle for us, right? And that's why we are vouching for payments that are more straightforward, like account to account using open banking, and payments that are more straightforward where we can just give a direct bank account integration on our platform, right? So imagine you seeing a payment option as, you know, ABC Bank, and you just choose ABC Bank, you use your account and transact. But the challenge is not all customers would have a bank account with ABC Bank, and that's the reason why there is a gap between merchants and customers' bank account, which is being fulfilled by all these parties. So just need to make sure payment is seamless and don't pass on the cost to the customer. Then there is no disadvantage. But merchants really want you know, seamless and direct payment with consumers. To your second point, right, that financial literacy is really a problem. I think financial literacy is definitely needed. It's something that needs to be taught in schools and colleges, and you know, to make students learn that where how should they spend, invest, and maybe make money from, and also how should they really manage their investments and finances, right? But to that particular example, right, it's not just making them literate, but also the ability for them to access that technology, right? So financial literacy at one point is okay, that okay, you enter that and a destination address of someone who wants to receive the money, but where do you enter that? There's a whole technology infrastructure of mobile, internet, right, all of that. And in cases of, like in my particular case, it's very easy for us to just get a phone for my grandma, but for struggling economies, it's very difficult to, even because the telecom infrastructure doesn't support internet penetration, right? Yes. The globe economy doesn't support like smartphone purchases or smartphone penetration in that country. I'm talking about countries in Africa, countries in Central Asia, where these economies are struggling and you really can't buy or get access to a smartphone that easily. So I remember working for a financial product that we built for Ethiopia, where the fintech product was based on a USSD. So you can imagine a normal feature phone like a Nokia 3310, where you just enter *3310# and your account number, and you can access your balance, right? You just need to enter maybe in the second call, USSD call, your PIN. So these are like based on the geopolitical environment and the consumer persona. You can be creative and can build products that can solve these problems. But of course, like financially, there are so many different aspects to it, and it definitely is something that needs to be taught to people in schools and colleges.
Thank you.
Another question? I have one.
Here.
First to finish. Imagine I'm a young student here in Berlin and I want to work at Wolt with payment solutions. What would you suggest to these students? What type of courses these students should have? What is the specialization the students should search for? Tell us a little bit about, give us some tips of how the students can improve this knowledge about this field.
Well, I'll rather talk about like startups. I'll rather talk about tech companies that really are open for, you know, young graduates to work for, right? What if you see these organizations have grown very rapidly, and the culture within these organizations is very high growth focused, right? So what they are particularly looking for is an individual that can jump onto the bandwagon, can start learning very fast and at the same time deliver value. These organizations are not particularly looking for people to come in, train, learn, make mistakes. They are particularly looking for people to just pick up, identify those opportunities, right? And to really do that, I think one of a very great way is not to wait for to be a part of the organization. You still can see the problems around you, right? So how about looking at a, you know, particular domain and a company that you really like to work for, find out a problem, work with AI, create a very compelling deck or a presentation for them that how you approach that problem, how you want to solve it, and reach out to their individuals and executives and send out your work to them, right? That's, I think is a very, very convincing way. If I personally am hiring for someone in my team, and if I see someone who has already done a big part of my work through even being outside the organization, and I think there are so many different ways now to really deep dive and research, right? With AI particularly at your disposal, you can really understand the market very well in a quick deep research. You can really do the data analysis and let AI just scan and you know, the whole internet for you. And as a user, you can really use their products and can really find out those problems, right? You can run surveys being outside the organization and can really identify or can be that customer voice for these companies and can share with them that this is something that I feel I have done and this is something that I feel that should be done in this way. And this would basically make it so easy for these organizations that are very high growth focused to look at your work, to see your approach, to see how you really care about and how you have resonated with the organization's vision, and to really see if something that you have done can really work out within the organization. So I think that's my 2 cents on, if you really want to approach, why don't you just go ahead and solve a small problem for them, like even being outside the organization. That would really help.
Guys, let's give a round of applause to Mr. Danish.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you so much. I would like to say thank you very much for your time to be here with us, with our students. I would like to say thank you for my colleagues here that support me in another edition for Café Scientifique. And thank you all for watching us, the ones that are online. And see you next time in the next edition of Café Scientifique. Thank you.
You guys have been a lovely audience. A big round of applause for Flavio and the whole team here. Thanks a lot.